Hi, my name is Logan. My company is Transactive Technologies, and we are a company that provides a platform for cyber practitioners to provision on-demand, fully customizable cyber labs that are provisioned and managed by our platform. And so today we're going to show a quick progress report on the MVP and where we're at, and we're going to emphasize the generative AI capability of the platform. So here you can see the web application, and we're currently in a project. So there are three methods of defining the schema that actually deploys the lab. So there is an interactive editor, there's also a code editor for the configurations, and then there's our generative AI feature. And all of these are rooted in the configuration file itself. And so we'll show just a generic use case of the interactive editor. And so we can add components like so to our network map. And this provides an intuitive way for the user to create various infrastructure within the labs. And so we can go ahead and connect this VM into a particular network. We can also add VPN access into the lab and then hook that up into a subnet as well. And we can also double click all of the components to get more details about them. And so these should update our configuration file. So the configuration file here is automatically updated based on edits in the generative AI editor or the interactive editor. And so you can see this here. And so just for the sake of showing this, we'll go ahead and add another component here. In this case, we'll call it VPN2, and we will just add this to the lab. And so we can see that it was syncing changes with the editor. And then so here we can see our second VPN that was added. So we could maybe add this to a network interface right here. So anywho, I'm going to go ahead and revert this. And that removes changes here as well. And then what we're going to do is go into the generative AI editor. And here is where we're going to basically describe what we want out of a lab. And so I don't have a prompt offhand, so I'm just going to kind of create something. So say, I want you to create me a lab that mimics a small company network. I would like 3 primary networks for finance, IT, and public Wi-Fi. Say each network should have no more than 3 VMs. The VMs, operating systems, and naming should be appropriate for the scenario, i.e. including databases and other resources you'd expect to find. Please also ensure appropriate firewalls are in place. So this is a prompt I literally just made up off the top of my head, so we're going to go ahead and send it. We can see that our AI is thinking. And so basically what's happening in the back end is we're sending this to a team of multi-agents, where in this case we have a supervising agent and an architect agent. So the supervisor takes in our task, refines it, adds details that we might be missing, and then forwards it onto the architect. And the architect is responsible for filling in the details for all of the various components within the lab and sort of building out everything in a hierarchical fashion that also makes sense. And so we're now getting results back. So this is our task that was sent by the supervisor to the architect. So you can see it's sort of refining our initial request. So there shouldn't be anything here, but you can read it if you're interested. And then the second should be the update from the architect on what it did throughout the construction of the lab. So all of the different components that were constructed, and then why. And then you can see here that it provides all the sufficient details based on what we had initially asked. And so it created 3 different networks, finance, IT, and a public Wi-Fi. It put relevant virtual machines with operating systems in each of them. So you can see here we have an admin server, a database that's running Debian, and then in our public Wi-Fi we have a couple of Ubuntu virtual machines. And then you can also notice the different sizes that are appropriate to what the virtual machine is. And then finally, the firewall accesses that you can see allowing appropriate ports. So RDP for the IT department, and then MySQL for the finance department, as well as ADN 443, and then outbound traffic for the public Wi-Fi. So this should have updated our configuration, which we can see here. So we define all of the different virtual machines that are in place. We can see our firewalls defined here. Scrolling down. Then we have our networks. So this is the finance network, the IT network, and the public Wi-Fi. And these should have references. So you can see, for instance, the associated firewalls and the network interface cards that the virtual machines reference. And then our interactive editor, this is all kind of jumbled. This is just a feature we haven't implemented yet that makes it look pretty off the bat. So I'll go ahead and pause the video and restart once I kind of get this looking a bit more nice. Okay, and we're back. And so basically, all that I've done is just drag everything to be a bit nicer to visualize. However, all of this is still just the same configuration that we saw before. And so you can double click here and see all of the relevant details to include the firewall rules that we talked about. So you can see MySQL being allowed inbound to the finance network. If we go into the public Wi-Fi, it's a bit tight, but we can see egress allowing all traffic, and then inbound allowing 80 and 443. We could also double click into our VMs and see the appropriate operating systems and sizes that were referenced. So here we see our Windows server for the admin server. We can see Ubuntu and Debian. We can see our clients are all General Micro and they're all Ubuntu. And then same thing over here, but we see our finance database, which is large, and then it's Debian as well. So next, what we're going to go ahead and do is just deploy this configuration. So we'll go ahead and deploy it. We need to provide a password for our service account credentials that they're encrypted with in the back end, and then also provide our multi-factor authentication. And boom, we're good to go. And so now we're just waiting on a deployment. So I'll go ahead and pause the video once more and then come back in a couple minutes once everything's deployed. Okay, and now we're back. It's been just over a minute and a half. And basically we have our successful result. So we can see all of our different infrastructure components being created here. So we can see our different networks, our routers and subnetworks, firewall rules, and then scrolling down, we can see RouterNet just to make sure that some of the subnets can communicate to the internet. And then here we can see our compute instances being created, and then all of the outputs associated with the different components. And so 35 total resources, about a minute. Oh, it was a minute and a half exactly. And so, so now I'll go ahead and go into GCP to show the actual deployment. Okay, and here we are in GCP. And so we can see we're in Compute Engine looking at our virtual machine instances, and we can see all of our different VMs that got stood up. So our database, our web server, admin servers, etc. And then we can go ahead and click into some of these for the details. We'll go into finance first. So we can see that we have that high memory database that we had talked about. And then scrolling down, we can see its network interface. It's also a Debian image. Going back, we can go to one of the public guest Wi-Fis and see that we have our micro machine. Scrolling down, network interface again, and we can see that we have Ubuntu on this one. So going back out, so these are all of our VMs that were created, and then we can go through and look at our VPCs that were created as well. And so here we have 3 networks that were created in addition to our default. So we can just click into one of these, and then we can see the subnet that was created as well as its range, and then we can also see our firewall rules. I believe finance allowed access to the database. Yeah, so here's our MySQL rule. I believe this is an outbound any rule. Or no, I'm sorry, this is allowing internal communication in the subnet. But yeah, so we can see that our firewall rules are in place, our networks are in place, and our virtual machines are in place as deployed from our application. Okay, and back in our application, so the last thing we're going to show is just tearing down the lab. And so we're going to do the same process where we put in our credentials and our multi-factor authentication, and then just tear down our lab scenario. And so I won't show the result here. It looks similar to the deployment result, but saying that everything's been destroyed. Once we get finished, I'll come back to GCP and show that everything was appropriately teared down. Okay, I'm going to get to GCP pretty early because I noticed that everything was loading. So all of the instances are being stopped so we can watch the actual deletion occur in real time. And so we continue refreshing. Yep, there we go. So most of our VMs are down now. This one should be going quick. And then we can go to our networks, see these being torn down. Just refresh a couple times. Might take a minute or two because of the firewall rules first. Oh yeah, we can see our networks, or our subnets going away. Yep, so now 0 subnets. And then the VPCs should be gone soon as well. So there goes one of our networks, and the next, and the next. And then our web app result just came in. It's on the other screen, but then everything was successfully destroyed. So that's destroying the labs that were created. Okay, and that concludes our progress report so far. So a little bit of next steps. So our next implementation for the generative AI feature is going to include managing all of the software within virtual machines. And so we didn't cover this so far, but it'll basically have distinct agents that are responsible for managing different categories of software to include things like developer tools or databases or web servers. And each one of those agents will be a specialist within the specific software. And the goal is to have it be as easy to create and provision the infrastructure as we showed here. So those are our next steps, but yeah, we feel pretty comfortable about being able to get there. And yeah, so thank you for watching.